Doing just great. Yeah, but it's not morning time just yet. We'll fast forward and we could be, if you watch this in the morning. Yeah, but I'm doing great. How things over with you? That's great. Yeah, on my side, I mean, the major thing for today is want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. So we've been together 7 years. So there's that. Yeah, yeah. So that's the last time you were probably in LA is when you came out to our wedding back then. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, 2017-ish. I know, it's crazy, right? Yeah. So yeah, yeah. It'd be cool to do a live stream together and kind of just hang out. Yeah, I know. And the thing is, you're going to PAX, so you're on the right coast for hanging out almost. If you're only just a couple of states away, you know? Oh, yeah. Um, so just a minor update. I just got a text saying that your audio is not working very well on your stream.
Okay. Okay. So I'm getting levels now. I don't know what happened because when I did a mic check earlier, it was fine, and then it
Yeah,
disappeared.
you,
But now I'm
yeah,
getting levels. I wasn't looking at OBS. Oh well. I don't know what happened there.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Hopefully the text fixed. Yeah, you probably weren't hearing anything that I was saying.
I was hearing things just fine on my side, but
Yeah, I don't think anybody was. There was not. There no one was getting any levels from what OBS is telling me. I don't
yeah,
know what happened there.
yeah, so I was pretty much having a one track conversation with you where you were kind of miming
Yeah, I was.
stuff
Yeah,
there for a
right.
little
I
bit.
was. I was acting as your imaginary friend, and so you were having this
That happens
ridiculous
every day,
conversation
so
that nobody
yeah,
else was hearing. Well, thank you for
yeah.
whoever texted and let us
Uh,
know.
yeah, Amita was happened to be watching the stream, so she's like,
Okay,
"Oh, I can't hear Eric," so she just pinged me just now. So it's
excellent.
like, "Oh,
Well,
really?"
oh, good. Well, we got the problem fixed, so thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was well. What I was saying before, I was on the West Coast. Our company's going to PAX, and so it's
yeah.
been a little busy. And I've been to LA in a while, and maybe next year I'll come on down. And I think that I've just about done it. We haven't gotten any of the really cool stuff yet, and I didn't mention any weather, and no one heard me say, "How are you doing on this fine morning?" Although I guess I'm spilling the beans a little
So,
bit, but
yeah, so
nothing's
just
further.
yeah, just to recap, like yeah, like so wedding anniversary, like last time you were out in LA, you were here for
Like
Amita's and I
seven
our
years
wedding
ago. Yeah,
7 years
yeah.
ago, and now you're caught now you're anybody who's watching now is caught up. And then we were just talking about how do we plan this out because you've been to PAX a couple of times
Mm-hmm.
and but it's not well, you will be at two PAX this year, and but you have been to PAX plenty of times, but
Oh yeah,
always on
I've been to
a
PAX
few
so many
states away.
times. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
and I've been to PAX more recently than I've been to LA, I think. So
yeah, yeah. But anyways, I'll get started. We can start actually
yeah, yeah. Let's
hanging out and
now
talking about
that I've got all
stuff.
the technical details fixed out, I'm gonna have to figure out what happened there because
Yeah,
I checked levels before we went live and everything was fine, and then I don't know what happened.
yeah. Well,
Anyway,
shout out to Amita. Thanks
yeah,
for
for
pinging us about the audio stuff. But
making sure our stream
glad we.
wasn't a complete disaster.
Yeah, all right. So I'll share my screen. Alrighty. All right. So for today's stream, I'm going to be going through. I'm going to start kind of laying the groundwork for
Mm-hmm.
whoa as
Mm-hmm.
she comes up to camera and falls back down to the earth to land on top of the warhog. So yeah, I'll be kind of plotting out the poses a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have sketches here. I was tempted to do some redlining sketches here, but I mean, the animatic is probably good enough where I'll just start to
Well,
just kind of directly animate on top.
could you explain
Sorry,
what
you were
that
say something?
means? Yeah. What does redlining animations mean?
So I was just gonna do a rough animation on top of this. So let me show you.
Okay.
So let's see. So I go ahead and do. I literally get the red as I can,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll start sketching. I'll start sketching the arcs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
From each frame until we go to the next one, and then I'll get rid of that, and then I'll keep following the arc. And then normally, if I turn on my onion skinning, which I'll do here. Uh, right here. Let's see. I'll kind of blend this all out. And I want to just look at the overall arc of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do something like this. I don't want to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm giving that red line arc here, I'm going to try to get all my assets to follow that arc as I keep drawing it.
I
Now,
see.
right there, right here, like this pose a little bit off, but I'll scooch it over a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the last one, I'll probably scooch that over just a little, make it a little bit higher. I might even adjust the pose as we're going. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see how far we get tonight. This is more of a complicated sequence. This is probably one
Mm-hmm.
of the more complicated sequences in our first episode. So we'll see how it goes.
And
But
so,
yeah,
okay. And so so when you're doing the red line, you're looking for this is more for motion. This is getting a sense of how
yep,
the motion's going to play out.
yeah. And then
Okay.
also and then redline isn't official. That's just what I'm calling it. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there's plenty of other terms for it, but I mean, I was gonna literally build in the drawing, and actually kind of just do this again. But like I said, like I was saying before, I already have her kind of sketched out in the animatic, and that's already good enough for reference. So I don't need to actually re-sketch one more time
Okay. I
in
see.
vector format.
I see.
But I
I
do
see.
like having that arc to kind of follow it and keep myself honest as I'm going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the sketch is there. The sketch is already there, but now I'm just gonna have to, as I draw, I'm gonna make sure that it's following the arc
Mm-hmm.
more closely than what I did in the animatic, I guess is what I'm saying. So
Okay. Okay.
we'll see where I get to tonight. Yeah, and we'll keep on trucking. Yeah, so that's the
Cool.
plan.
All right. Well, I haven't really honestly I was so busy last week, you know.
Hmm.
Didn't really explore anything super new. But my understanding is you have strong opinions about a show.
Oh
Um
boy.
which I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear about a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about tonight, like how we were gonna start this, talk what we're gonna talk about tonight for our stream.
No transition. Just jump
One,
right into it.
yeah, another thing is it's okay. Our theme's gonna be graphic novels and how they translate to television,
Okay.
and how awful Umbrella Academy season 4 has been,
Mm-hmm.
and how they lost something in translation based on what you've told me, reading the graphic novels all those times. Uh, yeah, season 4, it's almost as if you should just not watch it, not
Mm.
waste your time or spend money on a subscription for Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It's that bad. It's almost
Mm.
insultingly bad. Um, and I mean, like, I actually, texted you and ranted about that, like how angry I
Mm-hmm.
was. I was angry watching it. Meeth and I were both watching it, and I just was kind of stunned with just how bad and how shoddy it was.
Hmm.
For how good the show was when, like, where it was in season 1 to where it was in season 4, it just completely lost. It just lost the spirit of the show that made it so good. Characters were just all over the place. It's inconsistent. Relationships were just not even. There was barely. like I just didn't recognize the show really by the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just happy to see it end and never go back to it ever again. But it
Hmm.
made me wonder, like, but the other thing I wanted to bring up is how, this is the same old thing that I think it's always the same culprit. It's just it's writing. Like if the writing's really good, we're in great shape. It could be a terrific show. For example, The Boys. So far, that show has been great. And
Mm-hmm.
Eric Kripke, I think, is that how you pronounce his name?
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's taken liberties with that show,
Yeah, I mean
as a show,
it's
and he's
very
done,
different from the comic books.
yeah, very different, but yet it works. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as far as a audience member, I love that show. It's great.
I mean, I think what he
Is
does
it
though,
perfect?
yeah.
Yeah. Is it perfect? No, but it's
Mm-hmm.
great. But then you have Umbrella Academy, and like I said, this is where you could touch on it because you actually read the graphic novels and I haven't. But you said even by season three you were checking out, like
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't like that, the how it kind of you know took creative license with the story. So it's just an interesting, I don't know, topic that I kind of want to talk about tonight a little bit.
Well, I mean, I want to be clear. I have no problems with creators taking creative
Hmm.
license, right? I mean, I think, comic books are written as comic books, TV shows are written as TV shows, etc. And I think that generally speaking, you need to adapt a story to the medium through which it's being told. And I think that The Boys might be, for my money, the best example of how to do that, where, Kripke took the sort of core elements and the core themes of the graphic novels and, for my money, turned it into something way better than the comic books were. I read about the first 100 issues of The Boys and eventually just got tired of it. Um,
Hmm.
it just wasn't, it didn't hold my interest, and I didn't particularly care for the characters and the way that they portrayed the supervillains. You know, everything about the TV show I thought was done better. Homelander is a more interesting character. Billy Butcher is a more interesting character. Huey is a far more relatable character. In the comic books, I find him just absolutely insufferable, and I don't understand why Huey is still alive in the comic books. But the way that they, portray Huey and the way Jack Quaid plays him, he's become an endearing character. He's become a survivor that you believe can survive, right? And
Hmm.
um, so for my money, yeah, the Boys is the best example of taking the source material, taking the core themes and elements of the source material, and then making something that fits perfectly with the medium it's being told in. And it and you can be successful the other way too. Obviously, the early days of Game of Thrones, the first season or two of the Umbrella Academy, um, there's other shows that have been adapted from graphic novels, and like The Witcher is another example. The problem with those shows is they rely so heavily on the source material that the writers don't develop a voice of their own because they're just aping the voice of the original works. And by the time they run out of source material and they're on their own, they don't really, in my opinion, have their own identity. And they've relied so heavily on the source material that when they have to develop something and deliver something that's wholly their own creation, it falls on its face. Because for the first time, their voice as creators are finally being heard, as opposed to just basically proxies for Andrei Sapkowski or, uh, uh, um, J.J.R. Martin or Garth Ennis, or not Garth Ennis, but Gerard Way, right? And um, and it ends up becoming what Game of Thrones became, what The Witcher is becoming, what it seems like the Umbrella Academy has become, which is these writers now all of a sudden have to produce something on their own, but they can't because they never really tasked with that in the first place. And I think it's a real shame, right? So whereas Boys succeeds very well, and you can expand that out to, like, say, the first Hellboy movie. Uh, Guillermo del Toro loves Hellboy, but didn't want to just make the comic book. He wanted to do Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, and to varying degrees, the first Hellboy especially is I love it. It's one of my favorite superhero movies ever, right? But
Hmm.
then when the David Harbour movie came out, it was almost just a panel for panel remake of The Wild Hunt, which is a great story, but it's a story in the Hellboy mythos that comes after 20 years of story, and they had to cut out so much of the mythology and so much of um, what was going on in the story that what was left didn't really make sense, right? And I liked it just because I'm such a huge Hellboy nerd, but it failed in comparison to the previous two Hellboy movies. I will say though, as a brief aside, there is a sequence where Hellboy goes and sees the Baba Yaga, and that sequence was great. Um,
Hmm.
the makeup, all the effects, the contortionist that they got to play the Baba Yaga, really really great. The way they depicted her chicken leg house. I'm a huge fan of the Baba Yaga mythos. Not
Hmm.
John Wick fame, like the actual Russian witch. I
Yeah,
find her a very
sure.
interesting character. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, for the most part though, that movie wasn't a success because it had to cut out 20 years of mythology to make the movie work, right? And um, and I'm curious about how the new Hellboy movie is going to work because apparently it is very very similar to the comic book. Um, the director's even saying like he almost pulled a Robert Rodriguez or a Zack Snyder where he basically used the comic book as the storyboard.
Hmm.
And I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. I'll go see it because again, I'm a huge Hellboy nerd, but I am curious. But yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing, I experienced in season 3 of the Umbrella Academy. To get back to the topic at hand, um, the Hotel Oblivion storyline, as told in the show, had nothing. I mean, literally nothing to do with Hotel Oblivion, the graphic novel. Which fine, I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Again, absolutely make it your own, bring it to life, make it work for the medium that you're telling it in. My problem is that the story that they told instead of the graphic novel story was not good. It was not good, and it's just like, why didn't you stick to the source material? I don't understand. Like, you could have just used the source material and continued to just draw from what you had been doing for the two previous seasons, and instead you took this bizarre left turn, tried to create your own voice too late, and then what you came up with failed in comparison to what came before it, right? And at
So
the end of season 3, I was done with the Umbrella Academy. So it doesn't surprise me that season 4 isn't hitting for you, but
yeah, and now it's a moot point because now that's that's pretty much the end of the show. And
mm-hmm,
even if they somehow, you know how it is, like you never can count anything out. Maybe 5 years from now they said, "Oh no, everything's still good, and we're gonna do another season." Like I never want to come back to it myself, based
right,
on how terrible season 4 was. I just
right.
don't. The same thing with Game of Thrones. Like I know they have the whatever the new spinoff is.
House
It's
of the
before
Dragon.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really care because it's not Martin's. I mean, it's a derivative of Martin's work, but it's the Weiss and Benoff, I think, or
No,
whoever the
David
writers
DB
are.
Wife and David Benioff don't have anything to do with it.
Oh, they don't? Oh,
Mm-mm.
it might be good, huh?
Yeah, everybody I know
Um,
who's seen it says it's phenomenal. I still haven't watched it,
oh,
but everybody I know who's watched it, I mean, especially season 1, people's, at least anecdotally from the people around me who are watching it, the feeling is like season 2 is good, but it drags.
okay.
But season 1, people like love it, and I just haven't gotten around to
Oh,
watching it. So, but yeah,
oh,
no,
interesting.
DB Weiss and David Benioff don't have anything to do, as far as I'm aware. I mean, they probably
Oh,
have like an executive producer credit,
yeah, sure, sure.
but I don't think they actually have anything to do with the writing or production of the show.
Oh, that's good to know. I learned something new tonight about that.
Hmm.
Maybe I might check it out after all. Yeah. But yeah, anything with those two guys though,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
won't. I'm not going to trust. It's the same thing with once the right. I don't know what it is. I just don't have much patience for mean writers. Like
mm,
what's his name? The guy that did Battlestar Galactica did some great stuff on
Ronald D.
DS9.
Moore.
He's Yeah, Ron Moore. If I see his name, I run the other way now. I just don't
Really
trust him.
interesting.
Yeah, I was so mad at the end of Battlestar
So
Galactica's
I don't, yeah,
run.
I'm not, I don't want to like jump into his camp. I do like Ronald D. Moore. He
Sure,
wrote some
sure.
of the, I mean, he started in Next Generation. Like the man
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
is
I get it.
responsible for what Star Trek is to to a
Yeah.
large degree, right? And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I didn't love Battlestar Galactica at any point during the run of the show.
Uh-huh.
Like there would be like one good episode for every 4 or 5 episodes. And
Mm-hmm.
but, at the end of the day though, he thought the show was canceled at the end of season 3, right?
Oh, Battlestar Galactica?
And at the
Okay.
very last second, um Sci-Fi, or I don't remember what channel it was on, said no, 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 we want to do another one.
Oh,
And
jeez.
but by this point people had like started signing contracts for other shows. He had killed
Okay.
off characters, and
Mm-hmm.
I think to a certain extent, you know, his biggest sin was not saying, "Nah, dog, it's too late." Right? His
Mm.
biggest sin was taking the paycheck and trying to make something work. Um,
Okay.
because the story that the series ended on, I don't know would have been the same story if it had been renewed immediately after season 3, and they were
And they were
able to
just
just
gonna stay.
and he
Yeah.
didn't have to like kind of pick up the pieces and sort of make what he could out of what was left. So I'm not saying that it would have been better. I'm just saying that in this instance there were some external circumstances that may have had an impact on how that show ended. But again, this is coming from someone who is not a huge Battlestar Galactica fan. So
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
but I do want to like try to contextualize it a little bit,
Mm.
because he had a thankless task of making another season out of a show that he had effectively wrapped up.
Yeah, and you also bring up some good points that he did write some terrific. I love D Space Nine, and I know that was kind of one of his, and that was his, to me, the one
Mm-hmm.
where he kind of separated himself a little bit. I mean, I know he did Next Generation stuff. I don't know how it felt like D Space Nine was more of his kid compared
Mm-hmm.
to Next Generation, where you're sharing it with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought he really shined in Deep Space Nine. So there was a lot of build up for me to enjoy Battlestar Galactica for that reason. And I was a Ron Moore fan, but I didn't know about the backstory that you're telling me about. And now at this point, I don't. I guess maybe I give him too much credit or give him too much powers. But with what Ron Moore did with Deep Space Nine, I was expecting he'd write himself out of a paper
Yeah.
bag, no problem, and he would have been
Yeah.
able to do something with it, and he didn't. And that's what. So like I have this high expectation for him because he set up so much from the Star Trek series and all that stuff, and then to get to Battlestar Galactica and everything was incredible, and like yeah, so we ran into some hurdles, but yeah, I don't, maybe I'm being unforgiving to him a little bit on that, but I am a fan of what he did before. I think Deep Space Nine is terrific. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
underrated as, you know what I mean? Like, so I do have that, you know, hemming and hawing a little bit over that, but I'm still angry about that last season of Battlestar,
Yeah.
and I won't trust him now because, man, under duress, he did like I can't imagine Star Trek didn't have a smooth sailing, you know, they had to travel a lot of, they had to traverse a lot
Mm-hmm.
of crap too. And he wrote some terrific stuff, with especially with Deep Space Nine. I don't even, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, but Deep Space Nine has always been like the kind of the side show compared to the rest of them. Like it never got favoritism, I don't think, compared to Next Generation and although maybe Voyager was kind of treated the same as Deep Space
Yeah.
Nine, maybe I don't know.
I always felt
Um,
that Voyager was a bit of the black sheep.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, for my money, I Voyager, I mean, it is second only to Enterprise in all of
Hmm.
Star Trek, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
you really love that show. I
I
remember you.
loved Voyager, and I hate saying it, but it's always one of those things where you kind of have to, the only reason I got so into it is because I decided that I was going to go on a missionary journey for Star Trek, right? And and this sort of happened it's super interesting. Well, not it's not interesting at all, but I'm gonna tell the story anyway.
Yeah.
When I was doing freelance writing, I one of the articles that I worked on was the costuming of Star Trek over the generations, and it was just it
Okay.
ended up being a really interesting video, and I had to source a lot of footage from all sorts of Star Trek episodes, shows like stuff as current as Lower Decks, which famously I hate, um, I don't know. It just put me in a Star Trek mood, and I was like, oh, I'll just I'll watch a couple episodes of TNG. So I put on the pilot. What is it? Something at Farpoint. I don't remember the title anymore. And just kind of kept watching and went through all 7 seasons of TNG, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm still in a Star Trek mood, and so I started DS9, and I went through all of DS9, and then I took a hiatus because life got in the way,
Yeah.
um, and then when life got out of the way, I was looking for something to watch, and I'm like, oh shoot, that's right, I still have Voyager on my plate. So I started watching Voyager, right? And by this point, it was sort of the sunk cost fallacy. I've gone through
Hmm.
14 seasons of 2 TV shows, 25 episodes a season. I mean, I've watched hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Star Trek at this point. And I'm like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I'm just gonna choke it down and like, just to say that I did it. And so I started just watching on the background, right? Like I'd surf the internet, um, or I'd play a game on my Switch or something, and every once in a while, a good episode in season 1 and 2 would show up, and I'd be like, huh, okay, well, that was fun. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
farther into the show I got, I found myself like watching the show more and more of the episodes are like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Oh, and before long, season 3 rolled around, and I'm like, okay, now I'm invested, right? So it took
Hmm.
me like it took the show, in my opinion, about a season and a half to figure out what it was. But then when it does figure out what it is, it's just like, oh, this is great. It is back to the old ways of Star Trek. This optimism,
Hmm.
the idea that the
Hmm.
humans are actually the good guys, right? Um and bringing back that sense of adventure that was sort of lost in Deep Space Nine because it was so consumed by war, and the whole show sort of sat for the most part on a single space station, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
Defiant ultimately came along, and they got to go off station from time to time, but not the same way that Voyager was. And Voyager had the freedom to just do crazy stuff because it was in a completely different part of the galaxy. They weren't constrained
Yeah.
by any established fiction at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the time, season 7 came along, I was like super bummed that the show was over. I really, really dug Voyager. And it really snuck up on me too. Because I
Hmm.
watched the first season years and years and years ago when it originally premiered, and I was like, I don't like this show. And to go back to it as an adult and completely rediscover it was awesome. It was just like second only to Next Generation, pure and simple.
Yeah. It's
So
it's something maybe I haven't, so I mean in this one I haven't had a chance to watch Voyager. I don't know if I'll ever find the time to watch it now with everything else competing to for your eyeballs these days.
yeah, sure, sure.
But yeah, maybe one of these days I'll sit down and try to rewatch again. I tried to give it a chance the first couple of episodes. I just couldn't get into it.
Hmm.
But it's a Star Trek show, so I always try to revisit them once in a while. I haven't finished Picard yet. I think I was trying to tell you and our friend Kevin to get into Picard, and I think you guys actually finished it, and I have still haven't finished it yet. But yeah, I'll always try to go back to shows, especially in the Star Trek universe.
Hmm.
Probably I will avoid the Below Deck one or whatever, Upper Deck one, whatever one that one is, the
Below
animated one.
Decks, yeah.
I watched an episode of that. I just couldn't handle it.
No, it
Just felt
is. It,
too
it's it
different.
just it just feels like Star Trek fan fiction to me. It doesn't
Yeah.
really feel like Star Trek, and it is from sort of the Dan Harmon school of comedy writing or cartoon comedy writing, but the staff isn't as good as the staff on Rick and Morty, right?
Hmm.
And so it doesn't. It's crass without the sort of nerdy subtext that Rick and Morty has. It's
Hmm.
just it just is kind of crass with a bunch of nods to to Star Trek geekdom and nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I tried. I mean, I gave it my the whole college try, and the old college try, and I could not get into it. I found it basically insufferable. Um, and Discovery I could never get into. It was just too bleak. I mean, it was bleaker
Mm-hmm.
than Deep Space Nine, and Deep Space Nine was not an upper of a show, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's just
Mm-hmm.
not what I really sign on for with Star Trek. I want something. I want
You
the
just want.
optimistic future, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the Star Trek that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Strange New Worlds comes along, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is what I've been looking for in Star Trek for so long. And
Yeah, Strange New Worlds is great.
yeah, I can't wait for season 3. So I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't enjoyed Star Trek this much since I finished my run on Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Strange New Worlds is great. I've enjoyed that one too.
hmm
Um, yeah, with Discovery, I think part of the problem with Discovery is I don't mind the show. I think it's okay, but it's the same. I haven't finished the most recent season, so I can't speak to that one. But it's always you watch the first episode and you already know what's going to happen. It's Michael saves the universe again, kind of a thing. I think.
hmm hmm
And it just kind of gets old after the third time you watch her save the universe again. I wish there
Yeah.
was something else to it. And there's also, I know there's a lot of Star Trek fandom out there that love all the Star Treks. You can't go wrong with them. But for me, there was not as much humor in
hmm
Discovery. It's a little more serious, and I do enjoy the humor aspect of it. There was some elements of it with the science. I can't remember his name now, but the science officer guy, he was pretty funny at times. But
The
yeah,
Saru, the guy that Doug Jones played, or the Anthony Rapp
the
character?
the blonde guy,
Oh,
the
Anthony
guy with
Rapp's
the
character. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The one who
I
ultimately
like
like he gets hooked up into the
yeah,
spore drive. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's got that dry, acidic kind of humor, but I
hmm
thought that was kind of fun. But the one thing I do like about Discovery is, I mean, it felt like more of an experiment, like let's try this out kind of thing. And
hmm
Star Trek's known for that. They try things, and so for that reason, I like it. Just like with Upper Decks or whatever the cartoon was. I mean, they
Below
try
decks,
stuff
yeah, yeah.
below decks, thanks. But they try stuff, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I don't know if it's as great. I'm with you. I think Strange New World's good. I'm enjoying that one probably a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Doesn't take itself as seriously
hmm I also think the
as other
characters are
Star
better.
Treks.
I mean, like
Mhm.
the season 2 episode where you got to have a time travel episode, at least one in Star
Yeah,
Trek,
yeah,
and
sure.
I hate time travel, but in Star Trek I kind of give it a pass because who cares?
Hmm.
Um, but the episode that they did in season 2 with Laan, Noonien Singh, and James Kirk was awesome. It was so good how they turned it into a love story, like a what is it, a doomed lovers story. There's like a genre of love stories where they're doomed. It's a tragic love story or whatever, and just phenomenal. Just
Hmm.
truly, truly love that episode. What a great character building episode for Laan Noonien Singh, and she and the guy who plays Captain Kirk have, or not. He's not a captain at this point, but the guy who plays James Kirk, just such amazing chemistry. You believed that they were falling in love. Like it was just so good, and so tragic, but so like wonderful. I don't know. It was just really really great.
Man.
Really
So
thoroughly
you
enjoyed that episode.
yeah. I think we've talked about this before, but I'm gonna show my fandom with
Your
William
heart,
Shatner,
your
but
heartlessness, your
yeah, my
cold.
heartlessness. I wish I could have that objectivity and appreciate another actor playing Kirk. To
Mm-hmm.
me, what's his name? Is it Chris Pine? Is that who played
Chris.
him in the movies?
Yeah, yeah. In the reboot movies, yeah, it was Chris Pine.
I thought he
Oh
was
yeah,
a
he was.
terrific substitute.
Yeah,
And
great.
this guy is not Kirk. I just roll my eyes anytime he's on the screen. Like, this is not Kirk. Still not Kirk. Still not Kirk. Still not Kirk. And I probably drive me to nuts, which sometimes when I'm angrily shaking my fist at the screen, like I just can't. I want to like that aspect of it, but
Mm-hmm.
to me the worst part of Strange New Worlds is Kirk. I love his
Interesting.
brother.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
brother's terrific.
He's great. And I love that
I
he's
was
got the
like just
mustache. It's like such a great
yeah,
little nod to this
yeah,
very obscure scene in a very obscure episode of the original series.
yeah. It's
Um,
great. All that stuff's great, but nah, this kid, the guy. I know. I mean, the actor. I'm sure he's got great acting chops for other shows. So I just can't. I just it's just not Kirk.
yeah, I mean
So I
we've
don't.
talked
You
about
know.
this on the podcast, and he's a definite interpretation of Kirk.
Yes, he is. He definitely
That
is.
is true. I don't honestly think that traditional Kirk works anymore. I
I
don't
oh
think an audience is going to buy a womanizer like that anymore, right? And you know, and I don't think audiences are going to buy someone who is as blindly brash as that anymore. And I think that they do a pretty good job of taking Kirk,
mhm.
who has infinite charisma and infinite confidence, and making him a more viable character for sort of our modern culture.
Mhm.
I do agree, as someone who grew up um, with Bill Shatner as Kirk. He's not the Kirk that I grew up with, but suffice it to say, I think they've done a good job of reinterpreting that character for a modern audience sensibility.
See now, and here's where I'll disagree because they did reinterpret Kirk. His name was Chris Pine. He did an
Sure,
excellent job.
sure, but
He
I also
wasn't,
still
and he
think that
wasn't
there was a different era of filmmaking even then, right? I don't think that you can make the reboot Star Treks today.
really.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think the culture has shifted so much, even since 2009, which that was when that movie came out. I don't think you could make that movie today. I don't think it would resonate with audience in the same way. I
Huh.
think that era of machismo kind of male characters is it's just not what audience is looking for right now. At least in that character. I mean, look at all the male heroes right now. They're very stoic, right? They're pretty humorless. John Wick
Hmm.
is does not have a sense of humor. You know what I'm
But
saying?
Butcher in The Boys has plenty of humor. He's pretty funny,
Yeah,
and he's drips
but
machismo.
he's not a hero though. I mean,
He
Bill
is an
Butcher,
anti-hero, yeah, sure.
he's a villain. Let's be honest here, right? He's a villain who happens to be working for the good guys. But Bill Butcher he's not a hero, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but
you know, like
he's still the main character in the show, and it carries the show. Like if
yeah,
there was
oh, he
really
does, yeah,
if there was really that much of a backlash towards machismo, that show wouldn't be successful because he pretty much embodies that machismo stuff. If you want to label him an anti-hero,
mm-hmm,
sure, but he has most of the lines in every episode.
right.
He's center stage, and so there is still, I think there's, I mean, to me that proves that there's still an appetite to see all kinds of variables for the male archetype hero type of character. And then
Yeah,
again, back to Chris Pine's character, there was not like he wasn't a. I don't recall him getting the girl, quote unquote, like back in the '60s with William Shatner, for example. Like Spock was the one that had the love interest
sure.
in those movies. He was still Kirk though. Like he still his lines. He didn't have any lines that, at least I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I don't remember anything where it could be construed as bad compared to and again I'm going back to Butcher. Butcher has plenty of stuff where he's saying stuff that could be, oh my gosh, people could freak out on that, but
Yeah, but
I don't know.
Butcher's not supposed to be endearing, and you're not really
Yeah,
rooting
yeah.
for him, right? You're rooting for
But
Huey. You're rooting for Huey. You're rooting for Frenchie. You're rooting for Mother's Milk, and all three of those
I
characters are far more more sensitive, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, but I mean that they're
mhm.
far more um, humanized than Billy Butcher is, right? And you don't,
Well, see,
you root for Billy Butcher because Homelander's worse, but God, he's not. He is an absolute villain, right? And because he's a villain, it's okay to root, for him to be that way.
no, see, and again, I disagree because he has a love interest that he like his whole motivation is his love for his girlfriend and
Right,
taking care of her son.
right.
That's if you want to be a surrogate parent, there's nothing more endearing than that. So
Well, I
the thing
double
for
disagree
me,
though. But yeah, go ahead and finish
okay,
your thought. I go ahead and
all
finish your
right.
thought.
The so what you're seeing is you're watching an evolution of him becoming
Hmm.
bad because he's dealing with the duality of
Okay.
Does he want to be a jerk, or does he want to be a loving hubby that he didn't have? And I think as an audience, as a person watching the show, I'm enjoying that
Hmm.
push and pull. Now, of course, yeah, Huey's kind of that classic lovable, soft, lovable hero too. There's a couple of different heroes that we can kind of root for
Yeah.
with the boys, and Billy Butcher is definitely by far. I mean, on that, I totally agree with you. Like he's on the far end of the spectrum, but there's still redeeming qualities with him right now that I'm assuming he's going to lose in season 4. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I
But
think
yeah,
his arc is descent into villain, and in my
mhm,
opinion, and but when I say I double disagree with you, is that may have been him getting, um, well, even then, like his motivation wasn't for his wife; it was revenge. It was always revenge, and
sure.
and revenge is a bad place to be starting from. But then, like, what the show I think does a really effective job of showing is that after he gets that revenge, after he finds out that he has a son and his wife is dead, and he doesn't get his revenge, but his quest comes to an end because his wife is officially dead now, right?
Uh,
Before, what drove him is the potential that maybe she was still alive somewhere, and she was, it turns out. But then watching her die and that being definitively gone, um, uh, um, what the show does is like he keeps doing this. Why? Well, because he likes it. It's not. There's no nobleness underneath it. He was never going to successfully take care of that kid because he ultimately is a villain, right? And I think the show really hits that very clearly in the last episode of this current season, which, in case you haven't seen it, it's pretty clear that he puts his own sense of um sense of purpose above the needs of his son, right? And or
mhm,
not his son, but his surrogate son.
yeah.
And
See,
yeah, so
yeah.
I've never viewed Billy Butcher as a good guy. I've always viewed him as one of the villains, always, since episode 1.
Yeah, and so here's where I have to triple disagree with you on this
Yeah.
one because we everything you said, like that's true because it gets encapsulated at the very last episode. Oh, he's going to become a villain. But at least for me, I didn't. I like. Sure, does he get his revenge? Well, his revenge is killing Homelander. It hasn't happened
Hmm.
yet, so he still not hasn't got his revenge. But that has nothing to do with trying to take care of a child, like
Hmm.
the child. So what's his motivation is to be revengeful and take care of a kid, to be nurturing to a kid to take revenge.
Yeah,
Like I
but
don't, for
yeah, but
me, I
yeah.
don't, for me, I saw that as a redeeming quality, and I think
Hmm.
that's what was like. That was a tug and the push and pull. Like he wasn't completely a bad guy all the entire time until it really starts manifesting in this last season, and then
Yeah.
it really does. You really do see it in the last episode. But even in the last episode, he's trying to plead with them, and he's trying to say no. There's trying to
Yeah.
avoid spoilers, but even that, he's even there's I don't understand that's to me. I don't see the revenge factor if he's pleading with the kid to not do this or not do that, and at the very end, the kid doesn't listen to his surrogate dad, and then he goes all out, and then you finally see that's what flipped it was the rejection of love in a way. That's how I kind of saw it, but
Yeah,
yeah, if it was all
yeah.
revenge, he wouldn't have cared about the kid at all.
Well,
He would have been just
he was still using the kid because they wanted to
mhm,
train him to
yeah.
kill Homelander, right? So it still wasn't about
Mhm,
the kid. It was never about the kid. If if he really wanted to follow through with his wife's dying request, he would have quit the boys and he would have raised his surrogate son, and that would have been it.
mhm,
That would have been the end
mhm,
of his
mhm,
story. But it wasn't. Instead, he dumps him off with Grace, right? Who then,
mhm,
theoretically is protecting him, but he's just becomes another absentee father, just like Homelander
mhm.
was. He's
Yep,
just as bad
yep,
as Homelander on another side of the
mhm,
spectrum, right? He's just
yeah,
another deadbeat dad, right? But then when shit hits the fan and it seems like he now like his kid likes Homelander, now all of a sudden he's vested in the kid again, right? And
mhm,
I've always viewed it as like his interest in his surrogate son begins and ends with him, the kid hating Homelander, right? When the kid doesn't hate Homelander, he doesn't care. When the kid hates Homelander, he cares. And he's never cared about the kid. He If he really really wanted to follow his wife's wishes. He would have quit the boys. He would have raised the kid, and that would have been the end of his story. But that didn't happen. And even what Butcher is in the hospital room in the last episode, he is lying to the kid, right? He lures him into a bunker,
Hmm.
and he rationalizes to himself that he's doing it for the greater good, by trying to be honest with him and level with him and explain the situation. But then Grace comes on too hard. But at the end of the day, regardless of what his own rationalizations were, he was still trying to manipulate his surrogate son into becoming a soldier to kill Homelander, right? Billy Butcher
Yeah.
is a villain through and through. There is nothing redeeming about that character, just like there is nothing redeeming about Homelander. And that's why it's so fun for these two people to spar against each other, because they're both villains and they both deserve to die.
Yeah, I think maybe I've seen this a little bit more black and white because if he wanted to just be revenge, he would have been
Mm-hmm.
listening to his one side the entire time. You wouldn't ever see the enduring love side of him, like having a conversation with him, because there's redeeming quality. That's what's talking to him. That's his good side talking to him, and
Mm-hmm.
we've seen that now for ever since she died in whatever season it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if it really was about revenge, first of all, he'd be a really uninteresting character because there
Yeah.
was no conversation with having good at all
Sure.
influencing him,
Sure.
and so again, I think he does get there. He will become that villain. I think that's pretty clear
Mm-hmm.
with his methods and stuff like that. But the fact that there was this struggle, and there was a struggle from good, the light and dark, always kind of talking, and then
Mm-hmm.
giving in for a little bit, then not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, and again, this is just how we see it. I think there was some genuine love for the kid because that's his girlfriend's that's
Yeah.
his girlfriend's wish. He's doing it out of love. Like even when he's playing pool with him and stuff like that, that was like a more of a bonding moment, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But then
I
but I
yeah.
totally agree with you on the
Yeah.
manipulation part at the end because they're worried about him. I can't remember the kid's name. But they're worried about him becoming
Yeah.
that weaponization nuke power. But
Right.
can you imagine if he really is about revenge, there's no purpose for having a hallucination about his girlfriend
There
in
was
that way.
though.
And
I thought she
you
was a
know,
manifestation of guilt, not love.
oh, guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
never
everything
thought,
he's doing was not
because he
okay.
was, yeah, the last bit of shred of humanity he had, he felt guilty about what he was doing. He saw that he was becoming his father, and he felt guilty about that. It wasn't motivated by his love for yeah, I don't remember the kid's name. It was motivated by guilt, and that
Hmm.
guilt comes from the fact that he can't accept who he really is. And that's what,
Hmm.
Harry D. Morgan's character is his, like, dude, this is who you are, accept who you are. And so
Hmm.
by the end of the last season, he's finally accepted who he is, and that's why he stops dying, because he stops denying his truth. He stops denying who and what he is, right?
Hmm.
So it was,
Hmm.
I mean, his conversations with his dead wife, you could argue, that it was either guilt or, denial, right? And you could argue that the Harry D. Morgan character was acceptance and embracing,
Hmm.
right, who he is. And so that's the
Hmm.
way I saw it, at least, right? I never at any point felt like he was having his come to Jesus moment.
Hmm.
I never thought that the conversations with his wife were pure. In fact, the first time I saw her, I was like, okay, how is this a manipulation, right? What
Hmm.
manipulation is going on right now? And and then yeah, so that was my interpretation, at least.
Hmm. Well, regardless of how we see it, I mean, he definitely is. I mean, it seems like he is turning into that villain for
Oh yeah,
sure.
I mean, he's a great character. I love Billy Butcher.
Yeah, and then the fact, like with how you and I have been going back and forth, that's what makes him. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it's a testament to the writing
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
that
And
I
yeah.
think is missing. That's definitely missing in the comic books. But I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
read. I didn't read all
100%.
like 100 of them. I
Yeah,
read the
Billy.
first 10, and Billy was very cardboard cutout
Yeah, exactly. And
jerk
he
jerk
never
face.
never changes. He
Uh-uh.
never becomes an
No.
interesting character. But and I
Yeah.
always, part of it too is I think Carl Urban is such a phenomenally good actor,
Hmm.
and he really does such a great job of bringing that character to life. Um, uh, but yeah, no, I agree. I think Kripke and his team um have it took a really boring character and turned him into a phenomenally interesting character.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Boy, this is a really long.
No,
This is a
this is a
long
good one. That
aside.
we
Yeah,
haven't disagreed this much in a long time. It's about time.
yeah. The long aside is this is the long aside to say, yeah, but there's still, regardless of like what Billy Butcher is. So what you said, a revenge, like he's all revenge, he's all
Yeah.
negative. That's even more machismo to me,
Hmm.
and there's room for that in today's
There is, but
pop
only in
culture
certain types of
digestion, you
characters,
know.
right?
But back to Chris Pine,
Yeah.
his character is not nearly as bad as that, and he could totally exist. That's what I'm trying to say is he could totally exist in today's climate because he wasn't
Hmm.
even that bad before. Like, there was nothing. Like, I can't remember if he got canceled for anything being said in that. I mean, the
Yeah.
Me Too movement started. I mean,
I mean,
I
in
guess that's what
earnest,
I'm trying to
really,
say
in
is
like
like,
around 2016, right?
yeah, yeah, it's the
And that
last.
Star Trek movie came out in 2009.
Mhm,
So, you
mhm,
know,
yeah.
it was over half a decade before. And
Hmm.
I just
But I
don't,
mean, we are.
yeah.
But we do go back. We go, well, back then, and we're getting mad about this, or we get mad, get upset about stuff. Sure, rightfully so. If you want to, if you don't want to apply, if you don't want to entertain, like, over machismo, where do where you go to the far ends, like Captain Kirk in the '60s. Yes, I totally agree. Wouldn't be able to survive in today's, wouldn't be something that'd be
Hmm.
palpable in today's climate. But
Hmm.
Chris Kirk didn't. I don't see anything that's offensive just yet. I can't even think of anything in the movies that wouldn't translate over to today, and we could still get that version versus the Kirk that we
Yeah.
get now. I don't know.
I
But
don't,
yeah, we're really kind of
yeah,
going
yeah.
off of.
I guess I agree to a certain extent. Because like he does basically play a softer version of Kirk in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and it
Yeah.
works very, very well. Um, I just think that his, yeah, I guess, going all the way back, we sort of gone this recursive conversation, and finally going all the way back to the new version of Kirk, Wesley. I don't remember his last name off the top of my head. Which, yeah, this was a
Yeah.
hell of an aside. Despite all of that, I do think he fits better
Uh
in the
huh.
current sort of cultural milieu. And I think
Yeah.
that, and this isn't a commentary on whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. It's just
Mhm.
what it is,
That's just
right?
what you're. That's your. Yeah.
And um, and I think to that end, he does just a phenomenally good job. And I do have it on very good authority because I have female friends who are huge Star Trek nerds and they love this guy as Kirk. I'm telling you,
Uh,
man, they are
yeah,
hot for
sure.
him. So they clearly are doing it right. They clearly know what they're talking about, or
Uh-huh.
not what they're talking about, but they know how to contemporize Kirk for their
Mhm.
modern audience. So in that
Mhm.
regard, um, I think he's a success. But yes, he is not. He's not William Shatner, and he's not Chris Pine either. Who are very
Yeah.
different interpretations of that character. But that
Yeah.
doesn't change the fact that that episode was great, and I totally believed those two falling in love. So there we
Oh
go.
man.
Close the
Yeah.
loop on that one. That was like almost a half hour
Oh.
long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we totally this was a yeah, we pretty much were on opposite ends of almost everything here.
Hey, I
Because
love it. I love it. If we agreed about
yeah,
everything, then our conversations would be very
yeah,
boring.
yeah. But
Honestly, we agree
yeah,
on too much already. We need to disagree more.
sure. Um uh I think we're in a pretty good spot for tonight. I was gonna
Okay.
say, like, I've kind of fleshed in some poses. There's still I'm still working on it, but I got really some rough stuff going on, and I'll
Yeah.
keep
I
on
mean,
this
you're not joking.
for
This is a really complicated shot. A lot of custom poses that I suspect probably won't be used that
yeah.
much
I
elsewhere.
can't no, I can't really use anything from our model sheet and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing I was going to talk about tonight, but yeah, we'll save it for later for writing. But yeah, I was going to talk about how yeah, we'll just save it for later. But yeah, let's call it good for here for
Okay.
tonight. And yeah,
Well,
we'll continue this next week. Now you're not going to be
I
here.
will not be here again next week. I will be in Seattle. So yes, next week you'll be flying solo again.
Hmm.
Um, and that is just for that's just for next week though, because we'll both be back the week after that, I believe. Um, and then yeah, everything will be back to normal. So, but in the meantime, you can find us on Patreon. If you head on over to calamityjane.rocks, that'll take you to our Patreon site. Please consider subscribing and helping us make this cartoon a reality. We're also on Facebook and YouTube, which presumably you already know because you're watching this right now. You can also find us on Instagram. We do fun stuff from time to time over there. So check us out over there as well. But in the meantime, I will see you in 2 weeks. James will see you in 1 week. And until then, stay safe out there. Stay safe out there, everybody. Good night.
Good night.